the man who discovered Paul. Without Barnabas, there would be no New Testament. What if I told you that one of the most powerful texts in early Christianity was deliberately removed from your Bible? A document so revolutionary that church leaders in the 4th century decided it was too dangerous to keep. This wasn't just another ancient letter. It was a spiritual bomb that could have changed everything you thought you knew about faith. Today, we're re-uncovering the story of a forgotten epistle that challenged the religious establishment and nearly rewrote the rules of Christianity forever. Buckle up, because what you're about to discover might just shake the foundation of everything you've been taught. The forbidden text that threatened an empire. Here's something they don't teach you in Sunday school. Early Christianity was messy. Really messy. Forget the neat, organized timeline you might have seen in history books. The first 2 centuries after Jesus walked the earth were filled with competing ideas, conflicting testimonies, and fierce debates about what it meant to follow this radical teacher from Nazareth. Picture this. No unified Bible existed yet. Instead, countless documents, letters, testimonies, and sacred writings were being passed around secretly through underground networks of believers scattered across the Roman Empire. These early Christians were meeting in homes, hiding in catacombs, and risking their lives just to share these precious words. Among these circulating texts was something extraordinary. An epistle attributed to Barnabas, the companion of Paul and one of the most respected figures in the early Christian movement. For generations, this document was treasured. Brilliant theologians, like Clement of Alexandria and Origen, didn't just respect it, they treated it as divinely inspired scripture. It even made it into the Codex Sinaiticus, one of the most ancient and complete collections of Christian writings ever found. So here's the million-dollar question. If this text was so revered, so widely accepted, and so deeply influential, why isn't it in your Bible today? Fast forward to the 4th century, Christianity has gone from a persecuted fringe movement to the official religion of the Roman Empire. With that shift came something unprecedented: the need for uniformity. Emperor Constantine and his successors needed a single, cohesive message that could unite a massive, diverse empire. Enter the gatekeepers, church officials like Eusebius and Jerome, who were given an impossible task: determine which books were in and which were out. This process, called canonization, sounds spiritual, but make no mistake, it was deeply political. These weren't just scholars sitting in quiet libraries debating theology. They were navigating power dynamics, imperial pressure, and the very real need to create a version of Christianity that could function as a state religion. And that's where Barnabas became a problem. See, this epistle wasn't just retelling the Jesus story with flowery language. It was tearing down the entire religious framework that people had built their identities around for centuries. Barnabas made an audacious claim. The religious elite, the priests, the temple authorities, the keepers of tradition, had completely missed the point of everything God had been trying to communicate. According to this text, all those elaborate rituals, the animal sacrifices, the strict dietary laws, the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, none of it was ever meant to be the destination. They were road signs pointing toward something much deeper, much more internal, much more radical. Imagine you're a church leader in the 4th century. You've just been given authority, status, and power. Your position depends on maintaining certain rituals, hierarchies, and structures. And here comes this ancient text saying that all the external religious systems are just shadows of a deeper spiritual realities. The true faith happens inside the human heart, not inside buildings or through priests. Can you see the threat? For an emerging church hierarchy that was beginning to enjoy its influence, wealth, and control over the masses. A document preaching complete spiritual independence was dangerous. If every believer could access God directly, without intermediaries, without institutions, without the approval of religious authorities, what would happen to the power structure? So Barnabas was quietly sidelined, not with a dramatic public burning or an official condemnation that would have drawn too much attention. Instead, it was simply excluded from the final list, left off the table when the canonical books were being chosen, allowed to fade into obscurity while more manageable texts took center stage. This erasure wasn't an accident. It was a calculated decision to simplify a complicated story. The victors of theological battles wanted a clean narrative, one that reinforced their authority rather than challenged it. But here's what they couldn't erase: The questions this text raises: what other voices were silenced in the rush to create orthodoxy? What other perspectives were deemed threatening to survive? When we talk about lost gospels, we're not just discussing old manuscripts gathering dust in museums. We're talking about suppressed ideas, alternative visions of faith, and spiritual insights that someone decided you weren't allowed to hear. Barnabas represents a bridge between the Jewish roots of Christianity and its radical new Messiah bridge that the institutional church chose to burn. Today, as we rediscover this text, we reforce to ask uncomfortable questions. What version of Christianity might have emerged if texts like this had remained in the conversation? And what are we missing by only hearing the story the winners decided to tell? Decoding the hidden meanings. Alright, so we've established who erased this text and why they wanted it gone. Now, let us dive into the really mind-blowing stuff. What exactly did this epistle say that was so controversial? The Epistle of Barnabas contains what I can only describe as a complete deconstruction of religious literalism. The author takes the law of Moses, the sacred foundation of Jewish identity and practice for millennia, and reinterprets it in a way that would have shocked and probably angered most people at the time. His central thesis: the commandments were never meant to be understood literally. Let that sink in for a moment. For thousands of years, Jewish communities had defined their relationship with God through specific physical practices. What you ate, how you cleaned yourself, when you rested, how you marked your body. These weren't suggestions. They were the very definition of holiness. And here comes Barnabas saying, you've been reading the instruction manual upside down. Let's get specific. The Torah contains detailed dietary restrictions. Don't eat pork. Don't eat certain birds like eagles and hawks. Don't eat rabbits. For centuries, people assumed these were health regulations, or simply arbitrary tests of obedience. Maybe God didn't want people getting sick from undercooked pork. Maybe these animals were ritually unclean for mysterious spiritual reasons. Barnabas says, wrong. These weren't food rules at all. They were character warnings encrypted in culinary code. According to his interpretation, when God said don't eat pork, he wasn't concerned about your digestive system. He was warning you about a certain type of person, the kind who only remembers their creator when they read desperate, when they're hungry, when they need something. The moment their belly is full and life is comfortable, they forget all about God. They're fair-weather believers, spiritually unreliable, and you need to avoid becoming like them. The prohibition against eagles and hawks. That wasn't about poultry. It was a warning against predatory people, those who do unearn their bread through honest work, but instead circle above the vulnerable, waiting to swoop down and exploit them. People who build their lives on the suffering of others, who accumulate wealth through violence and manipulation rather than contribution. And the rabbit. This was about unchecked physical desires and sexual promiscuity. The symbolism runs deeper than you might think. It asks about people who chase momentary pleasure without any thought to consequences, character, or self-control. In this radical reinterpretation, the Bible transforms from a cookbook into a psychology manual, from a rule book into a mirror. Every dietary law becomes a call to examine your character, your motivations, your relationships. But Barnabas doesn't stop there. He takes aim at one of the most sacred practices in Jewish tradition: circumcision. For thousands of years, this physical mark on the male body was the ultimate sign of belonging to God's chosen people. It was the covenant made visible, literally inscribed in flesh. It separated the chosen from the unchosen, the holy from the profane, the insider from the outsider. Barnabas declares that this entire time, people were focusing on the wrong body part. True circumcision, he argues, isn't about the flesh, it's about the ears and the heart. He points to the Hebrew prophets who had been saying this all along. God doesn't want a mark on your body. He wants a transformation in your soul. He wants ears that can actually hear his voice, breaking through the noise of the world. He wants hearts that are soft enough to feel compassion instead of being hardened by selfishness. A physical ritual without internal transformation is meaningless, like having a diploma but no education, a wedding ring but no love, a religious title but no actual connection to the divine. Then comes the Sabbath reinterpretation, which is perhaps the most forward-thinking of all his teachings. The religious establishment had turned the Sabbath into an extremely rigid system, or hours of specific restrictions. Detailed rules about what you could and couldn't do, a checkbox to mark off each week to prove your devotion. Barnabas looks at this and sees something completely different. He talks about the eighth day, a prophetic concept pointing toward the coming kingdom when all of creation will be renewed, when the broken will be made whole, when the corrupt will be purified. His argument: you can't truly keep the Sabbath holy until you yourself have been made holy. The Sabbath rest isn't just about abstaining from work for 24 hours. It is about entering into a perpetual state of spiritual rest, living every single day from a place of connection with God rather than anxiety, striving, and ego. For someone walking in the Spirit, every day becomes a Sabbath. The division between sacred time and ordinary time collapses because everything becomes sacred. Do you see why this was threatening? This teaching completely eliminates the need for religious gatekeepers to tell you whether you're doing it right. It removes the power of the religious elite to judge your compliance with external rules. It places the entire weight of spiritual life directly on your shoulders, your awareness, your integrity, your internal transformation. This is why these lost gospels matter so much, even today. They challenge us to stop treating religion like a checklist to attend service. Check. Say prayers. Check. Follow dietary restrictions. Check. Donate money. Check. Barnabas pushes us toward something much more demanding: constant self-examination. If the commandments are shadows, then we need to stop staring at the shadows and turn around to see what's casting them. We need to look at the light itself. This level of personal spiritual responsibility is exactly what made this text too dangerous to include in the official canon. It is so much easier to control people with a list of external rules than to trust them with internal transformation. So here is the question this blog leaves you with. Are you following traditions because everyone else does? Or are you actually pursuing the truth behind those traditions? Are you practicing religion? Or are you experiencing transformation? When the temple fell and everything changed in 70 AD, something happened that shook the spiritual world to its core. The Roman army, under General Titus, laid siege to Jerusalem. When the smoke cleared, the temple, the epicenter of Jewish worship, the dwelling place of God himself, the architectural wonder that had taken decades to build, was nothing but smoldering ruins. For believers at that time, this wasn't just a military defeat. It was an apocalyptic crisis. If God lived in the temple, and the temple was destroyed, where was God now? Had he abandoned his people? Had the covenant been broken? Was everything they believed a lie? Into this spiritual vacuum stepped the voice of Barnabas with a message that is both devastating and liberating. The temple had to fall. Not because God was angry, not as punishment, but because humanity had made a fundamental error. They had confused the container with the contents, the symbol with the reality, the building with the builder. Barnabas writes with surgical precision: before people truly believed in God, their hearts were fragile, corruptible, like structures built by human hands, temporary, and destined to crumble. The physical temple, magnificent as it was never meant to be permanent. It was a teaching tool, a placeholder, a temporary address until humanity was ready to understand the real destination. And what was that destination? The human soul itself. This is where the epistle becomes genuinely revolutionary. The new covenant that Christians talk about is unjust God swapping out one set of rules for a different set of rules. It's not Temple 1.0 being upgraded to Church 2.0. It is something far more radical. The complete relocation of the divine from external structures to internal reality. According to Barnabas, when you experience genuine forgiveness, when you place your trust in something beyond your ego, when you surrender your life to a higher purpose, something supernatural occurs. You become architecture. You are reconstructed from the inside out. God literally takes up residence within you. Think about what this meant for a first-century believer who had just watched their entire religious system collapse. They didn't need to travel to a specific city anymore. They didn't need priests to perform rituals on their behalf. They didn't need to bring animals for sacrifice. They didn't need permission from religious authorities to access the divine. They were the altar. Their prayers were the incense. Their daily lives were the offering. This is incredibly empowering, but also incredibly threatening to anyone who derives power from being a religious middleman. If every person is a temple, If every believer has direct access to God, if the Holy of Holies is inside your chest rather than inside a building, then what happens to the entire infrastructure of religious authority? Priests, rituals, special occasions, sacred objects, all of it becomes optional at best, obsolete at worst. Barnabas connects this idea directly to Jesus, but not in the way you might expect. He doesn't present Jesus as just a wise teacher or a good moral example. He presents him as the cornerstone, the architectural piece that the builders rejected because they could unfigure out where it fit in their existing structure. Jesus, in this interpretation, came to prepare for himself a new people, not a new ethnic group, not a new nationality, not even a new religion in the traditional sense, a new kind of human being entirely. Barnabas calls these transformed individuals children of light, people who have been architecturally rebuilt by divine intervention, restructured from the foundation up according to a completely different blueprint. Here's where this gets uncomfortable for modern audiences. We still build temples. We just don't call them that anymore. We build temples to financial success, spending our lives worshiping at the altar of the stock market, sacrificing our time, relationships, and health to accumulate more money than we need. We build temples to fame and influence, measuring our worth by followers, likes, and public recognition, treating social media platforms like sacred ground where we perform rituals to gain approval. We build temples to ideology, turning political beliefs into religious doctrines, treating anyone who disagrees as heretics, building our identity entirely around being right. We build temples to self-making our personal desires, comfort, and happiness the center of the universe, the ultimate measure of what's good and true. And just like the ancient temple in Jerusalem, all of these structures will eventually crumble. Markets crash, fame fades, political movements rise and fall. Even our physical Bethesda ultimate personnel temple eventually return to dust. Barnabas' message echoes across 2,000 years with haunting relevance. The only sanctuary that matters is the one you carrying around inside you. The only cathedral God is interested in is the beating heart in your chest. This is the essence of the lost gospel. Message not lost because the documents disappeared, but lost because we keep forgetting to look in the right place. We search for God in buildings made of stone. We search for meaning in external achievements. We search for truth in institutions and authorities. But according to Barnabas, there's a room within you, a sacred space, where the divine has been waiting all along. Not waiting for you to perform the right rituals, or say the right prayers, or join the right organization. Just waiting for you to stop looking everywhere else and finally come home. The physical temple in Jerusalem fell because it had served its purpose. It was time for humanity to grow up, to stop depending on external structures, and to recognize the sacred architecture within themselves. The question that should haunt us as we absorb this teaching is, what temples are you still clinging to? What external structures have you been using to avoid the much harder work of internal transformation? Because until you're willing to let those false temples fall, you'll never discover the indestructible sanctuary that's been inside you all along. The battle you're fighting every single day. Now we come to the part of the epistle that hits differently because it's not abstract theology anymore. This is about your daily life, your choices, the invisible war you're fighting whether you realize it or not. Barnabas shifts gears dramatically and presents a teaching known as the two ways. This isn't gentle spiritual guidance. This is a battlefield map, a stark, uncompromising description of reality that divides existence into two opposing paths, the way of light and the way of darkness. And here's the kicker, there's no neutral ground, no comfortable middle path, no spiritual but not religious escape hatch. According to Barnabas, every action you take, every word you speak, every thought you entertain is moving you along one of these two trajectories. On one side stands the way of light, guided by what he calls the angels of God, forces that pull you toward truth, compassion, courage, and eternal significance. On the other side lurks the way of darkness, dominated by the angels of Satan, influences that drag you towards selfishness, destruction, exploitation, and ultimate emptiness. This teaching would have resonated powerfully with first-century believers who felt like they were living in enemy territory, constantly under pressure to compromise, to conform, to abandon their values for survival or success. But here's what makes this relevant today. We face the exact same battle, just with different weapons. Let's break down what Barnabas says about the way of light. He's not talking about religious performance or looking holy on the outside. He's describing a fundamental orientation of the soul. He starts with simplicity, not simplicities and simple-minded, but simplicities and clarity, honesty, freedom from the mental gymnastics we use to justify our worst impulses, a mind that isn't constantly spinning webs of self. He calls for meekness of heart, not weakness, but strength under control, the ability to have power and choose not to abuse it, the capacity to win an argument but choose understanding instead. He describes someone who is rich in soul, not materially wealthy, but spiritually abundant, someone who has cultivated inner resources that can't be taken away by circumstances, can't be destroyed by market crashes or relationship failures. And then comes this striking image. He says believers should be like the pupil of the eye when it comes to guarding God's word. Think about how instinctively protective you are of your eyes to slightest threat, and you blink. You turn away, you shield them. That's the level of vigilance we should have about protecting truth and wisdom in our lives. Perhaps most challenging of all, he commands followers of this path to love their neighbors more than their personal existence. Not just be nice to people, not just tolerate differences, but actually value other human beings more than you value your comfort, safety, or even survival. This is radical, selfless, luminous living. This is what it looks like to walk in the light. But then Barnabas pivots to the way of darkness, and his description is chilling. He calls it crooked and full of cursing, not just doing bad things, but a fundamental twisting of reality, a path that bends away from truth at every turn. And the people on this path, them destroyers of God's workmanship. This is fascinating language. He's not saying they're just hurting themselves. He's saying they're actively destroying the beautiful things God is trying to create in other individuals, in communities, in the world itself. He describes how these people turn away from the needy, not just failing to help, but actively averting their eyes, hardening their hearts, convincing themselves that suffering is someone else's problem. He says they are advocates of the rich, but unjust judges of the poor, using their influence to protect the powerful while crushing those who have no voice, no resources, no defenders. This is where the epistle becomes social commentary, not just personal spiritual advice. Barnabas isn't merely talking about individual moral failures. He's describing systemic darkness structures of society where exploitation is normalized, where the strong devour the weak, where injustice is rewarded with prosperity. Sound familiar? We live in a world where billionaires pay lower tax rates than teachers, where corporations pollute communities without consequence, where algorithms are designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities for profit, where entertainment glorifies violence, greed, and superficiality. The way of darkness isn't some ancient concept. It's being broadcast into your home 24/7 through screens that tell you happiness comes from consumption, that worth is measured by wealth and fame, that the point of life is to maximize personal pleasure and minimize personal discomfort. Here is what makes Barnabas' teaching so powerful. He doesn't just describe the two paths and wish you luck. He gives you a command. Be good lawgivers to yourselves. In other words, don't wait for external authority to tell you what's right. Don't outsource your conscience to culture, to trends, to what everyone else is doing. You need to become your internal judge, your conscience keeper, your standard bearer. He warned specifically against hypocrisizing to walk both paths simultaneously, having one foot in the light and one in the darkness, going to church on Sunday and exploiting people on Monday, posting inspirational quotes online while treating actual humans in your life with contempt. You can't serve two masters. You can't walk two paths. Eventually, you have to choose. And the urgency of this message should hit you right now, wherever you are, because the war of the two ways isn't happening in some distant spiritual realm. It's happening in your phone, in your workplace, in your relationships, in your thoughts right this second. Every time you choose convenience over integrity, you're taking a step on the way of darkness. Every time you scroll past suffering without feeling anything, you're taking a step on the way of darkness. Every time you justify cruelty because everyone else is doing it, you're taking a step on the way of darkness. But every time you choose honesty, even when it costs you something, you're walking in the light. Every time you extend compassion to someone who can't benefit you in return, you're walking in the light. Every time you resist the cultural current and stand for something true, you're walking in the light. This is why these lost gospels were suppressed. They don't let you be a passive believer. They don't let you coast on religious identity. They demand that you wake up and recognize the battle you're in. So, which angel are you listening to right now? Which path are you walking? Because according to Barnabas, there is no third option. The man they called Son of Consolation, behind every powerful message is a messenger. And to truly understand the weight of this epistle, we need to look at the remarkable human being who penned a Torah, at least inspired the tradition that bears his name. His birth name was Joseph. He was a Levite from the island of Cyprus, which means he came from the priestly tribe, the religious elite of Jewish society. But somewhere along the way, the apostles gave him a new name, Barnabas, which translates to Son of Consolation or Son of Encouragement. That wasn't just a nice nickname. It was a recognition of something fundamental about his character. This was someone who had an extraordinary gift for seeing potential in people when everyone else saw problems. Think about what it means to be called Son of Encouragement in a movement that was constantly under threat, constantly fracturing under pressure, constantly tempted to give up. Barnabas was the glue that held things together when they should have fallen apart. Let me give you two stories that reveal who this man really was. First story, Saul of Tarsus had been the most feared enemy of the early Christian movement. He wasn't just a skeptic or a critica. He was actively hunting down believers, dragging them from their homes, throwing them in prison, voting for their execution. He was the face of persecution. Suddenly Saul shows up, claiming he's had a supernatural conversion experience, that Jesus appeared to him in a blinding light, that he's now a believer and wants to join the movement. The response from the Christian community: absolute terror. They thought it was a trap, an infiltration strategy, a way to identify and destroy them from the inside. Nobody trusted him. Nobody would go near him, except Barnabas. Barnabas was the only person with the courage to approach this reformed persecutor, to look him in the eye, to listen to his story, and then to vouch for him to the rest of the community. He put his reputation, his safety, his standing on the line to give Saul a chance. And because of that act of extraordinary faith and encouragement, Saul became arguably the most influential figure in Christian history outside of Jesus himself. Without Barnabas, we wouldn't have half the New Testament. We wouldn't have the missionary journeys that spread Christianity across the Roman Empire. One man's willingness to see potential where others saw threat literally changed the course of history. Second story. Paul and Barnabas are on a missionary journey with a young assistant named John Mark. Somewhere in the middle of the trip, John Mark gets overwhelmed and abandons the mission. Egois hum. Later, when they're planning another journey, Barnabas wants to give John Mark a second chance. Paul absolutely refuses. In Paul's view, the young man proved unreliable and doesn't deserve another opportunity. The disagreement becomes so intense that Paul and Barnabas split up Decoe and work together anymore. Because of this fundamental difference in approach, Paul goes in one direction. Barnabas takes John Mark and goes another direction. And guess what? Barnabas was right. That young man who failed, who gave up, who disappointed everyone with Barnabas's patient encouragement, he became the author of the Gospel of Mark, one of the 4 canonical accounts of Jesus' life that we still read today. Barnabas had a supernatural ability to see the temple being built inside people when everyone else just saw rubble. This pattern defined his entire ministry. He worked in the shadows so others could stand in the spotlight. He lifted up voices that would have been silenced. He invested in people that society had written off. Tradition tells us that Barnabas eventually returned to his homeland of Cyprus to preach, and there, according to early church records, he was martyred, stoned to death by people who feared his message of internal spiritual transformation, his refusal to bow to religious hierarchy, his insistence that the kingdom of heaven was accessible to anyone willing to become a living temple, even in death. His influence persisted. The epistle that bears his name continued circulating for centuries, shaping the thinking of brilliant theologians, offering an alternative vision of what Christianity could be. So, why does any of this matter to you watching this video right now? Because the story of Barnabas is a reminder that the most transformative parts of history are often the ones we've been conditioned to forget. The full story is always more complex, more interesting, and more challenging than the simplified version we're taught. The lost Gospel of Barnabas isn't just about ancient theological debates. It's about what we lose when we let institutions decide what voices we're allowed to hear. It's about what happens when fear of disruption overrides the pursuit of truth. This epistle reminds us that we are not defined by the religious rituals we perform, but by the internal transformation we pursue. We're not defined by the buildings we construct, but by the light we carry within us. Barnabas spent his entire life demonstrating that the kingdom of heaven isn't a distant destination you reach after death. It's a present reality that you build within yourself, starting right now, today, in this moment. The real lost gospel isn't the manuscript that didn't make it into the official Bible. The real loss is forgetting that each of us has divine potential waiting to be awakened. The real tragedy is living our entire lives externally checking religious boxers, following traditions, joining institutions while ignoring the sacred construction project that's supposed to be happening inside. Every time you choose compassion over judgment, you're building the temple. Every time you encourage someone instead of dismissing them, you're building the temple. Every time you see potential in people that society has written off, you're walking in Barnabas's footsteps. The epistle that bears his name calls us to stop waiting for priests to tell us we're acceptable, for buildings to make us holy, for rituals to make us righteous. It calls us to recognize that the dwelling place of God has always been right here in the human heart that is willing to be transformed. That's the message that was too dangerous to include in the official canon. That's the gospel that the religious establishment tried to silence. But here's the beautiful irony. 2,000 years later, we're still talking about it. The bridge they tried to burn is still standing, and the voice of the Son of Consolation is still encouraging us to become the temples we were always meant to be. If this journey through the Epistle of Barnabas opened your eyes to something you've never heard before, do me a favor, subscribe to our channel, The Lost Gospels of Jesus. This channel is dedicated to uncovering the hidden histories, the suppressed voices, and the forgotten wisdom that can transform how you see faith, spirituality, and life itself. Smash that like button if this video challenged your thinking or taught you something new. The algorithm needs to know that people care about this kind of deep, meaningful content instead of just surface-level entertainment. Drop a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. Did this change your perspective? What questions do you still have? Have you heard of the Epistle of Barnabas before? Let's keep this conversation going in the comments section. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video in this series. We're going to explore more lost texts, suppressed teachings, and the fascinating history that mainstream narratives leave out. And finally, share this video with someone who needs to see it, that friend who is always asking deep questions about faith, that family member who's questioning what they've been taught, that coworker who's searching for something more meaningful than religious routine. This isn't just information, this is an invitation to think deeper, question more, and recognize the sacred architecture within yourself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep building that temple.